hey, I'm going to go to that next level. In order for you to get to that next level, it's not going to be, you're going to bottleneck it if you try to do it all.
Right? Like I see it all the time. People are like, I got a marketing manager now. And it's like, you look at it over 6 months, like what has this person done?
Yeah.
A lot of times you end up with a better result when you're like, stop, go to them, or you handle it. You know what you're doing. I put you in this position for a reason.
It's all about how many vehicles can we get? What can we get our revenue to? How many sales managers? How many people
Right,
can I have?
Welcome back to another episode of the Mission Control Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Stearns. This podcast, you're in for a treat. This is going to be a banger. I got the boys with me. But shout out to Roofer for help making this happen. If you need instant estimates, if you need clean and pristine proposals, CRM, contact the team at Roofer. They're great company. Click the link in the description. You'll be happy you did. Tell them I sent you. Anywho, we've got Austin Fricker with A. Fricker Roofing. We've got Connor Rodich. You don't even need an introduction. That's my bad.
Get out of here.
And this guy here, Eric Reno, Paramount Roofing. Let me ask you a question. Are you as fucking hype as I am right now, guys?
I'm ready.
Overhyped.
Overhyped.
Right. I don't.
You probably overhyped.
I don't buy
Feeling
it.
the energy, man.
Did I oversell it? It's like when somebody
you
tells
did.
you how fucking great a movie is, then you go and see like that movie sucked.
Yes.
You just could never live up to the
You're about to be
expectation.
disappointed. Yep, exactly.
Brace yourself for disappointment. Just kidding. So you guys are. So you're out of Tulsa. You're out of Detroit. From my understanding, you guys both started like ground level, like clean up, carrying shingles, like all that type of shit, and have successfully grown to right around $20 million companies. Yeah.
Yep.
First of all, let's give a fucking round of applause. Christian, can you hit the thing where it clap? All right, fuck it.
Come on, we're just going to clap. We're going to clap for each other here.
Give it up for the boys. I'm interested to hear from both of you. Is when I ask you what's the biggest point of adversity in that journey, what comes to mind? We'll start with you, Austin.
Learning the financial aspect and learning the marketing aspect, and then figuring out how to manage multiple types of personalities, and then tying that all in together and making it all work and systemizing it so that it can work without you doing all the work. That was the hardest thing, because I started off as just a roofer installing roofs. I knew nothing about how to manage people. I didn't know anything about marketing, anything about business financials. I had no understanding of all that, and I just had to figure it out as I went. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge. Putting the roofs on, and honestly selling the roofs was pretty easy for me because I knew the systems, I knew the components, and I knew people. I was always a good people person, always able to talk well. But then learning all the back end stuff, that was the biggest difficulties for us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of nailed it there. I mean,
Pun intended.
yeah, right. Going from, nailing the shingles, selling the shingles, organizing deliveries and stuff, like that's all second nature. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. Yeah. But actually putting real leadership in place, keeping the culture, learning and just learning and constantly growing. That's the hardest part, right? Like the financials. I mean, everything that he was saying, the back end stuff that's not where I come from. I've never had a white collar job ever, right? Like I've always been in the weeds. You know? I thrive in the weeds. So, trying to get yourself out of there and, focus on the business instead of in the business is a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And delegation is another one, right? Like you're so used to wearing all the hats, taking all the heat, being the fire extinguisher, the sales guy, you're everything. And then starting to delegate that out and being okay with like, hey, let them learn, like you got to teach them.
That's a super powerful principle.
Step.
Yeah, right there.
Step.
Just letting people do it and make mistakes along the way.
Yeah. And learning how to hire. And knowing who to hire, when to hire, and then how to train them whenever you're the one that just got trained. You know what I mean? Yeah. And figuring out how you even go about those situations. Like, okay, I know that I need somebody to fill this gap in supplementing. I barely know how to supplement. How do I hire somebody for supplementing and then get them trained in supplementing? That's another thing. And plus the industry is constantly changing. And so whenever the industry changes, there's new roles that develop. And of course, with every step of growth, there's another step of hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, it's interesting because we obviously operate under distinctly different like business models, right? An advertising agency, roofing company. But, similarly, like I can relate to that because when I was hiring for a video editor, producer, I don't fucking know the position at all, right? So it's like I'm trying to hire for someone where, and like Christian, who's responsible for all this beautiful content, right? Like he's been a godsend. So I did my best, like leverage resources, network, things like that. Got some candidates, and then I hired somebody externally to come in and train to try to solve for that issue. What have you guys done in that journey to help alleviate some of those struggles along the way? Were there external partners? Was it you researching? Was it mentorship? Like, what does that look like?
So I would say a lot of it was just by trial and error, so whenever I hired my first, I guess you would say, position outside of just roofers, because at the beginning it was me and 2 other roofers. I'd sell the roof, me and my 2 guys, Alfredo and Victor, we'd go put the roofs on. I'd sell the next roof, we'd go put them on. Then I brought on my buddy Jeremy as a sales rep. I really didn't have an idea of what a sales rep even did or like how that really went about. All I knew is I wanted somebody to help me sell more roofs. So the first thing I did is I figured out, okay, I need to learn how to be a sales rep. I know I've been selling roofs, but selling roofs and being a sales professional are 2 completely different things. And so the first company I reached out to was Ryan Groth with Sales Transformation Group. And we went through that process, and then I brought on somebody else, and we all went through that process together. We all learned together. And then I think that just through training people, you end up learning just as much or more than the person you're training. So that's also one of the advantages to being the trainer is even if you don't know as much, you have to end up learning more to train that person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and hiring people that are smarter than you, that are better than you, that have more, like you said, you don't have to know. I always go back to like football, right? Like Andy Reid doesn't have to be able to throw the pass and catch it, right? He just needs to orchestrate it. He just needs to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. So, but he's got to draft the team. He's got to put the players in place. He doesn't, put Patrick Mahomes as a defensive end. He knows he's a quarterback.
That'd be sweet.
Right. But, that's the way, that kind of mentality when you go from like the player on the field to the head coach and then, taking mentorship and accepting help and, seeking outside to find people. We recently started working with Connor, getting the financials tighter as we grow and as we keep taking more on. I brought in my first controller, so I have a real controller, right? Somebody that went to college, somebody that's like everything I'm not, right? And you have to be okay with that. It's like, hey, I'm bringing on somebody smarter. I'm going to trust you as the CFO. I'm going to make sure that you're in control of the money. It's not me anymore.
Yeah.
That's a big sign of growth right there. I mean, that's something that I'm definitely struggling with. So I applaud you for taking that step, man. That's incredible.
Yeah, there's really I think whenever you're talking about where you guys came from, there's really 2 ends of the spectrum, right? Like I was the corporate guy that came into the business and had the business background and had to learn the things you guys learn. Obviously, you guys are still more of the subject matter experts than even I am. But I think that you really, if you had to make it simple, there's so many different, facets to the business, different departments, things like that. But really there's the business side, there's the roofing side, right? The roofing side, what you guys know, what you've always known, that's the stuff that, we're learning things in the opposite direction, I guess, is the best way to say it, right? So, so for like when you said, hey, we just, hired executive partners, your company did, our mission, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help when we get to a certain level, right? We got to make it all fine tuned. We got to get it to where it's all really a nice symphony, and all of the departments have to sync up, right? Financials is a huge piece that's missing in this industry because it's always the last thing to get to, right? We send our bills out, we collect on them, everything seems to be good, but then we have no visibility in the future. We don't know what's really going on. We don't know those things, right?
This is such a fast recurring,
Correct.
Money in, money out.
I always say
in,
that.
Supplement, waiting on mortgage, waiting on ACV, waiting on RCV.
Yeah, and it's high ticket. It's high ticket and it's high turn. That's what I always say. It's high ticket, high turn, which is part of the intrigue and part of the interest of why we got in this thing, right? Is because you can build a roof in a day, 2 days, turn it, but whenever you do incorporate the elements of insurance and all these other facets, it's much more complex, right? So I think that what you guys have is obviously from the elements of knowing how to, mop down a roof and, do all these different things. There's so many different elements of what you guys have done that I have not had the opportunity of being able to do and working from that direction. But that's where it's like we both, like, these are the relationships that for me personally, I look up to you guys a lot, learning from you guys from the roofing side. And then on the other side of it, it's like, hey, that's where we can come in. We can help systemize the business and get the financials organized and do all that sort of stuff. And so it's kind of a good thing, whenever that comes together. And it makes for a really special experience whenever it all comes together.
Yeah, the pyramids weren't built by one person, right? It's like, I think a lot of people get stuck in that mindset where it's like, I'm the owner, I know best, I'm the best sales guy, I'm the best operations manager, I'm the best, I'm keeping track of my own finances, I don't want anybody in my books, right? Like, to break that cycle and allow to have a team to build the pyramids or build whatever you want to build.
I always say, like, I never really looked at myself as like a quote visionary, but in reality, that's kind of what I've found myself mostly to be. Yeah. And what that also means is we have tons of processes, right, that have helped us grow and help us maintain growth and help make sure that we maintain profitability. But the truth is me being a visionary, I am literally the worst person in the company at following those processes.
Absolutely.
Same. And so, like, literally, 100%. Like, whenever, like, they'll hand me, like, some work orders, they're like, these are awesome. They're like, okay, yeah, just put them on his desk. We're not going to, nobody in the company is going to be able to figure that one out, but it's like, because I know, hey, what needs to happen in this situation. Speaking to one of my employees, help me build a process out for this that makes sense so that you can operate in this life, in this position, and make sure everybody can work together. And then I'll rubber stamp it and let's roll with it. I can't say that I'll always go with it because honestly, some of that stuff's above my head, which is why you're in place.
Yeah. I love that.
Makes a lot of sense. So, and this will dovetail nicely into some questions that I have for you momentarily, Connor. But from your experience, you've been in the roofing space and you've been heavily involved with many different roofing companies, different sizes, geographic location, business models, storm retail, et cetera. Do you find this typical, their struggles that they're expressing, is that typically what you hear or what you see when you're involved with roofing companies?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think to date it's been over 140 businesses in more than 30 states. So I've seen a lot of different things, right? And it's been in a short period of time. I think it's been like 4 years, maybe even just a hair under. So yeah, I mean, the stuff they brought up was exactly where, it's either coming from, I guess the other side of things I didn't bring up is a lot of our industry starts in sales and then they see the dollars and then they move into it, right? Yep. So a lot of those things are missing the pieces you guys are talking about. And that's really what inhibits real scalable production growth, because if you can sell it all day, that's great. But if you can't produce it and you can't do it with a quality product, it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't. And that's where I would say, I'm not saying that that's, more important. Everything has its place, right? Marketing, sales, production, everything has its level of importance. It's all a balancing act. But the thing is that I feel like you really got I always talk about the four-legged stool. Like, you've got marketing, you got sales, you got production, you got billing, finance, right? If you can get to where you have two of those pegs in the stool, then you're going to be, sitting okay. You're definitely not going to be a stable, solid foundation like this table right here, but you're going to be in a good spot to be able to build off of, right?
That's not the foundation though, but table got there was casualties to the move.
but I think that at the end of the day, like, if you can get those couple pieces, which to me is production and sales, if you can keep revenue moving and you can produce well, even if it's not the most organized effort or it's like even controlled by the owner operator that's doing everything, if you can even just produce well and have a good process for that to be able to then delegate out, then that's really that's the starting point, right? Yeah. And then at that point, it is about like amping up your marketing, getting to where you can have some visibility into your business, understanding KPIs, understanding the financials, and like even at a point what Eric just mentioned. Eric runs a phenomenal business, so does Austin. But the thing is like at some point, then there's a next level and there's a next level, yes. Right? And if you really want to be, everybody throws around $100 million, right? Or whatever, the chase. The reality is like, it's all about profit. It's all about what you can do with it. It's all about what you can create with it. And so at the end of the day, if you're sitting there and you're like, hey, I want to be a $50 million roofing company, well, Of course, we're talking about just residential, let's say, not commercial based, because then it gets a little bit muddy. But if you're like, hey, I want to build a $50 million residential outfit, like that's great, but there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in order to make that happen. And so like everybody throws that up there, or they say, oh, I did 30 million or 40 million in storm work. Like you can ride the roller coaster like a lot of them do, but to have sustained growth and doing what these two guys are doing, it has to be like there's levels to this shit. Like that's reality.
All right, Meek Mill, shout out.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to. I always have to quote that, but it's true.
You want to know what's wild too is like I hear so many people. I want to hit this revenue. You
Dude.
never hear them talk about profit.
I'll talk about it all day long. Let's talk about it.
And it's super
I love
important.
profit too.
Well, and what's
Yeah.
right? Well, people lose sight of it. It's like one of those vanity stats, like top line revenue. I want to do 30 million. I want to do 10 million. It's like also.
Let me make my statement. Revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity. Cash is reality. That's the truth. Okay?
Hold that.
Okay, hold that.
Shots fired.
So what's really interesting, like I've had a lot of exposure over the last decades to roofing companies, different sizes, different places. There's obvious symptoms to what the struggles are that you guys have expressed throughout your journey, right? And the unwillingness for people to try to be objective and look at these, as opposed to just treating the symptom every step of the way and going fucking crazy, right? To address the underlying issue so that they can be set up for success and scale. Like if you have problems delegating, your time that you can deploy into the business that on things that only you can do is limited, right? So you're cutting yourself short in high value areas and opportunities of growth because you're done doing something that you could pay somebody $13 an hour to do.
Yeah,
right?
I can't tell you how many times, because you asked that question. It's such a broad question to ask, because these two gentlemen, I'm sure they've had similar pain issues and things as they've grown through their business because of the backgrounds they have, right? But depending on if you came from sales or you like me, you just came from the corporate background, you were like a corporate leadership guy, and then you found an opportunity and you linked up with somebody who was already in the industry, like things like that. So it kind of all depends on where you start a lot of times. But dude, roles and responsibilities and just like knowing what everybody's going to do is one of the biggest issues. And then through that, it's like delegation. There are times where I have to literally, just this last onsite, we were there north of the city, like 45 minutes. And I was telling these guys, I'm like, you have it all lined out. You have to literally just tell them, stop coming to you or go to this person, or like, it's not that it's not there. It's just like, you've got to at some point as the entrepreneur say, hey, I'm going to go to that next level. In order for you to get to that next level, it's not going to be, you're going to bottleneck it if you try to do it all, as you guys know. So at the end of the day, you have to literally be like, nope, that's not what I do. Go to that guy or go to this guy. And that's one of the biggest problems, man. It's like, it's not even that it's that complicated. It's just that because it starts a lot of times with two guys like this that are rock stars, they understand it. They can problem solve anything there is to problem solve. But then when they become the focal point and they don't just literally say, no, I'm not going to answer that question. Go to John or go to whoever, right? That's one of the biggest issues we have, even with companies that are a sizable revenue, top line.
And it's interesting because I have an anecdote to kind of support that, right? We were at breakfast this morning and you had asked Eric something about the CRM and he's like, you got to talk to Tyler about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, give me some shit right there, bro.
That's Tyler's thing.
I love it. Yeah.
Same thing. Somebody comes to me, I'm like, call Charlie.
Yeah.
Well, I could figure it out, but you're better off calling him.
And a lot of times, whenever you do give people in those roles that responsibility and that ability to do their thing, you put them in that role for a specific reason. It's because you felt like they could really take over in that role. And a lot of times you end up with a better result when you're like, stop, go to them, or you handle it. You know what you're doing. I put you in this position for a reason. You need to build up your confidence, make the decision. And if it hurts a little bit, if we make the wrong decision, hurts a little bit, I promise we will survive. I've yet to encounter something that took me out of business, and I don't think you're going to be the one that causes it. Just
edification, and being able to give that affirmation of like, you can do this, and you got that. That is huge. I mean, that's like the thing. Let them be the owner of their thing, and and then they'll love it forever, right?
Because one of the biggest problems that can happen too is, and the result of not doing this is cutting your manager's legs off, right? Like. Yep. If somebody asks, it becomes like a mom-dad thing where the employee will ask one and I'll be like, no. And then they'll go to my general manager and be like, yes. And then if that happens, that completely eliminates all authority of your managers that you have in place, right?
Yep.
So your function managers, their finance operations, marketing, sales, whatever the managers are. That's why it's important to send them to that manager, because you don't know if they asked them before. You don't know what their answer was. So it's like, hey, you have to refer back to your manager, because I'm not going Not going to cut his legs off.
And a lot of times you don't even know, well, you're not in it. So like you don't then even know. So then you open your Yap or whatever, and then you end up giving them the wrong guidance or whatever. I mean, I got a company out of Colorado right now, really, really healthy business, 8.5 million top. Like I think they did 2.4 last year bottom, like crushed it. Right. It's freaking, that's what I would hope all of our companies are like, right. Absolutely. But they had a really bad habit, and now they're finally coming to grips that like they can't control it all. And just in the last 6 months, like had a rock star GM in place, 2 really good sales managers in place, like really, really doing good things. Sales leads more so than sales managers, but really good people that cared and had been like with them. And one of the things that they said, I'm not going to say the name of the company's name or the last name, but they were like, this is the such and such project, meaning the company's ownership's last name of that company. And I was like, no. This isn't their project. This is y'all's project. This is this business's project. So you need to step up and you need to make it known that like, hey, I'm ready to own my role. I'm ready to own my thing. And that's one of the biggest things. It's like an issue in this space is like people get in, and because it's kind of a good old boys club a lot of times or whatever, then they kind of gravitate to that idea. It's like, oh, it's the Austin thing, or it's, it's whatever. And like, and then what happens is then you're playing, you're kind of, I won't say you're in your ivory tower, but a lot of times you don't even know that's happening until someone like we came in place and I made them aware of this, and they're like, we didn't even know that was going on. Like we have great culture and this and that, but they weren't in that mindset of like, hey, I'm going to step up and really own this thing and do this thing. They were like kind of living in the shadows of like, oh, this is the last name of this company's group. No, it's not. It's not. It's your guys' thing. It's the business. It's time to go. You know what I mean?
And I'll tell you, I think one thing that's helped us get some of our people to own things is bringing people into this industry that were never in this industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I only hire green people. Never hire. Yep.
Because a lot of times whenever you bring somebody on that's been with XYZ roofing companies, they see how they're operating, and it's just like what you explained, the boys club and the such and such show. And whenever somebody comes in, for example, from working at a meat market as a butcher, they have to own every cut that they're working on. Well, they come into here and they really own things. It's a whole different ball game. And then whenever you build them up from just a normal job to a certain level of success, then they're like, okay, now I've actually built something of my own. You know what I mean? They built something of their own within your organization. And so that's why we always refer to everybody as our team. You know what I mean? Because we are an absolute team. It's not really employees. It's a team of individuals that are growing together, growing themselves personally and professionally. And then what the business does is just the final result.
Yeah. Right. That's the golden nugget right there. Yeah. That's like, get them to own their thing. They're going to be loyal to you forever.
Christian, make sure you got the right people.
That. Yeah. clip that in there.
It is amazing though. Like when you think of it like that, I always say team, I never say employee, whatever, we're just team. But when you bring people in, I'll use one of my sales guys, for example. He was a cold call insurance guy. He worked for an insurance company, just cold calling, right? And I was like, man, you'd be awesome at sales. You'd be so good at sales. And he's been there for 2 years now. Now he's got a house, he's got cars, he's talking about investment properties. And it's amazing. Like, this is why I do what I do, right? Yeah. Is to like bring people in, give them an environment where they can grow in, right? Mm-hmm. And prosper and open them to new things. Because as the company grows, we'd love to just bring people up. Like, keep coming with us. Like, once you're with us, our retention rates, we don't lose people. We don't have a cycling sales force, right? We have the same team all the time. We're always together. We're in the thick of it together. Like, we're a team.
That's good.
I'd rather have a smaller sales team of high performing individuals with a good culture than, like you said, a revolving door of salespeople that aren't even necessarily, they're just people dipping their toes in or
it's madness,
passing through.
Like,
it's crazy.
I know a company that's right by me. They have 12 to 14 sales reps, right? They don't do near what we do. We have half of that, less than half of it.
Yeah, we don't have
everybody's doing, 2, 3, 4 million. You don't need all that. And then plus it keeps those guys busy. It keeps them fed.
And it's really hard to maintain like your culture, set the tone of what you want the experience of your employees to be when it's constant churn, right?
Yep.
And your customers.
Yeah, for sure. Connor, I got a quick question. What do you think is a bigger impediment to growth if you had to, based on your experience, take a stance on it? Would it be the absence of like sound systems and processes, or not holding people accountable to making sure they're following the systems and processes?
Honestly, accountability probably.
Yeah.
I think accountability reigns all, because like processes and systems are great, and that's good for a business. Like, most of our companies, actually all of the companies we work with now are more than $5 million in annual rev, which again means nothing other than the fact that like normally by that point they've got a few key players in their organization, they've got their shit somewhat put together, right? But no, I would say that at that point, even when you're like just starting to get into process development, because let's be honest, like most of the time, and you guys could probably speak to this even more than I could, I've been in the startup phases. I've had, I've run the race. I just haven't done it for, the period of time these guys have in their own one entity business. I've done a few different businesses in a short period of time in this space, but you guys could probably speak to that and say like, 1 to 3 million, you're just like kind of like just doing it all. Oh, yeah. Like there's no like when people come to me and they're like, oh, I need to build processes, and they're like $3 million. I'm like, come back and see me. Like there's also a lot of survival, and there's good stuff to do in the meantime. Like it's not like you mean nothing to me. That's where I started my consulting. I mean, Austin knows that. I mean, like I started out with all the small companies, and then worked into being able to handle bigger challenges, right? But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the reason I'm saying that is because like processes are great, and processes are going to help you get to the next level, right? But it's accountability. Like if you just started incorporating accountability, like true accountability, I say this all the time. A lot of the owners that are in this space, they have a really hard time having difficult conversations because they like the money and they like the ability to be able to put roofs on for a pretty high ticket, and especially if they're insurance, a lot of times it's a low pressure sale unless you're in like a crazy competitive market. But a lot of times it's like they're just going, growing the cash bank, like things are good, but then they won't have the conversation with Sandra or Sarah or John or whoever it is just to be like able to handle that situation. Like they will skate around it and keep them on staff and be miserable in their business. I'm like, no, go have the conversation. Like they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Go keep them accountable. Or you even yourself. Like I'm all for the whole visionary mind, and I'm kind of a little bit weird because I have both sides of that to me. But like even myself, like I need accountability too. Like if I'm falling on, if I'm failing on a project, or I'm behind on, we're doing a website rebuild right now, and it's very sophisticated, and I'm like it's been driving me nuts, and I'm getting behind, and like my team's like, you got to get back on it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, because I'm traveling, doing this, but like accountability is where it starts. So if you don't have the accountability, then processes really don't matter at that point. When you said what's more important or what matters most, I think the reason I said accountability is just because it starts there. And if you don't have that, then you won't be able to execute your operations the right way.
There, yeah. And I was going to say something on that. I think also being a business owner, you have to make so many decisions, and you do have to have so many conversations about so many different topics on an hourly basis that for me personally, I get into what I call like kind of a decision-making coma, where it's like, if I have to make one more decision, I'm going to go fucking berserk. Right. You know what I mean? If I have to have one more fucking hard conversation, I'm going to go nuts. So I do have some people in our team that I'm like, you know what? I honestly think you're able to hold these people accountable better than I can, because it takes some of that emotion out of it. Being the business owner, you have the most emotion invested in it. That's your baby. Sometimes it's easier for somebody like a sales manager or a service manager to have some of those harder conversations, because it's like, oh, the boss, the head man wants to talk to me, or, whatever the case is. It's kind of having that conduit also makes it easier to approach and an easier landing. That's where those key people.
Plus, it gives your managers authority.
Yes, exactly. You're not cutting their legs.
Like we're hiring interviewing project managers. I'm not interviewing them. My operations manager, because he's their superior, is interviewing them. Right. So when they come in, they know who the superior is. Right. Like one thing that changed my business is EOS. We started doing EOS 3 years ago. My implementer is one of my mentors. He's now became one of my friends. So I talk about it a lot just because this is what I know. Right. Yep. And without that, with EOS came accountability, and it came structure, right? And it's not the pyramid system that you see in the accountability chart. That's not the way we look at it. But it also gives the business a guideline of where does everybody go? And it eliminates the end runs of the repair tech jumping to the integrator or jumping to the sales manager, right? There's channels, there's levels to this, right? There's channels.
Shout out Meek Mill.
Right. We keep giving Meek a bunch of love, baby. Right. No, you're right.
So without the channels and without the, in whatever way you structure your business, whether it's EOS or different approaches or your own approach, right? Yeah. Like having that sound system to fall back to is important.
Yeah, don't be the box checker. And what I mean by that is, okay, we've got a system and process, check, and then it's done. Or we just hired a marketing manager, so we're good now, right? Like I see it all the time. People are like, I got a marketing manager now. And it's like you look at it over 6 months, like what has this person done?
Yeah.
It's like they show up for a meeting once a month. There's not much they're contributing. They're obviously not paying very close attention or being like proactive as far as finding different opportunities to increase revenue by way of their marketing.
Everybody's like
and advertising.
Hire happy though. It's all about how many vehicles can we get? What can we get our revenue to? How many sales managers? How many people
right,
can I have?
And it's like, I did it. Great, I did it. It's like, okay, well, you just.
But what did you do?
In theory, this was going to help your business, but in practicality, like what you just did is lost another $60,000 in profit because you're paying it to a dead position.
Dude, I could talk about this. Yeah, I could talk about this for days. I call it playing house. I literally talk about playing. I'm like, I tell you, my clients, I've got clients right now that are in that, like, they're in what I call the gray zone. Okay. The gray zone is like that $5 to $8 million. You don't have enough. Like, I don't know if it was like Armosi or someone that coined it. It's like it's kind of like the concept of your friend groups. It's like when you come from being like a low level entrepreneur or like kind of a guy that's, from your beginnings, right? You got your friend group, right? But then like there comes a period in time where it's like a very lonely journey. It's before you can get to the next group, right? Yeah. Where you're in this level of group. And it's the same thing in business where when you're talking about, that $1 to $3 million company, like whenever you and I started, Austin and I basically grew up in diapers. There's a whole story with that, but like we grew up playing hockey together and had been around the scenes with one another. And then he went into the space and I went in the space. I think he was in as a laborer, maybe even a little bit before I was, but as an owner. But long story short, yeah, when you're going through that grind, that $1 to $3 million grind, it's one of those things where like you surround yourself with people that are in that same vicinity and you're doing the same things as those people are doing, but then you get in this weird space, which is like that 5 to 8, which is it's a more exclusive group. There's certainly companies out there doing it, but it's more exclusive. And then you get to where you're doing into this, what I would consider to be more established in most markets, like that 15 to 20 and up, right? And then that's where, so all that to say, you're kind of in this weird space, gray space in that time frame where it's like you're just trying to figure it all out and you're trying to do all these different kinds of things. And you guys could probably speak to that even more than I could of like what that journey was like getting through that period of time because you're trying things. You don't have enough to your own disposal though to be able to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go throw money here and throw money here. I mean, you could do that, but as you mentioned, Mike, you're just sacrificing. I mean, you're burning profits. You're just burning profits though. I mean, I don't know what your guys' experience was with that, but like, what was that like when you're in that period of time?
Yeah, I mean that's where you become business owner to visionary or business owner to, whatever you want to call yourself, right? Like it's not just your tag on Facebook, CEO or president or whatever you want to, like you actually have to separate and become the visionary, right? And that's what we were kind of explaining in the beginning of this is like, that's one of the biggest hurdles is that delegation, the accountability, like everything that we're talking about, that's when that stuff is traction. Like that's when you're either hitting the road or you're just spinning your tires.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, what I was going to say is also for me personally, I think a lot of what got me through some of those gray areas, like you were explaining, is doing some soul searching on who I was, number one, who I wanted to be, and then based off of that, what I wanted my business to be. Yep. And that changes over time. Whenever I first started, I was like, you know what, I just want to have a company with a few guys. We'll put roofs on, we'll do our thing. I'll make a good living. I was used to making $40,000 a year, risking my life every day. And so then I was like, I just want a job where I make $80,000 a year, And so then whenever that happened, I was like, okay, well, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. I want to go to the next level and see if that's really more comfortable for what my standards of who I'm going to hold myself to be in the future is going to be. And then I figured out, you know what, I'm really going to focus on what my legacy is going to be. What do I want my legacy to be? Yeah. Okay, I want it to be this. So that soul searching kind of helped me push through those gray zones and talk to more people and again, mentors and everything else to try to figure out, okay, this is who I really want to be this year. And it might change next year and the year after.
Did you guys ever kind of fall in that trap though, which is why I started this? I just want to ask you that real quick. Like you guys ever fall into that trap of the playing house component when you're in that process or did you stay pretty true to
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
You have to learn.
Yeah,
you have to learn. And that's so.
And you don't fail if you don't give up. You know, you just keep trucking.
No, I was just gonna say I've got a few of those that are in that, like, few clients that are in that space right now, and that's the reason I was bringing all that up, was because, like, you get caught up in this, and then what you do, you get the new building, you put your, you spend however much just make it all tricked out, and then you get the trucks, and you got the employees and the project managers and production managers.
The key to that
area
area to break through is to duplicate yourself. Right? Or find your yin and yang, right? Like like my general manager, Tyler, is everything that I'm not. He's organized. He's into the spreadsheets. He's a data driven. He's accountability driven. Like that's his thing. Like I'm the dreamer, right? I'm the one that comes up with this crazy shit every quarterly meeting. I'm like, yeah, you said we were going to do 20 million. No, we're going to do 36 now. It's everybody's like, no way. And it's like, no matter what I say, we get there, right? We get there. But when you're in the gray zone, like if I had to give one nugget of advice of how to get out of the gray zone, is find people, like find that person and don't settle. Like find them.
The right people.
Yes, you have to.
Don't settle on
But
wrong,
that one
the wrong
person
people,
that you can count on that is there and is next to you, right? Like ready to battle back to back and swing.
But you also have to be able to recognize, and this is what I was getting at with that, is you have to be able to recognize when you are playing house. Because most guys are like, they get caught up in it and they get too much. There's tons of egos flying in this space. We all know that. We all have one. And like, but then I'll have conversations with clients and it's like the new building, the new this, new that. And then they're still doing it. And I'm like, you're not making profit. Like, and the whole idea and concept, which I think is just hysterical, because they want to act like there's some private equity suite and be able to, like, spends tens of millions of dollars on your marketing and then just axe all the overhead and show all this the incredible profit. It doesn't work that way right now. Like, you have to still be able to, and even in that space, it doesn't work. You have to be able to produce what you sell. You have to be able to run the finances for it. And so the whole concept of like, oh, I'm going to play house until everything catches up. Like, you should be able to incrementally, I'm a fan, and I know you guys are too, of like building it the right way and doing it step by step, going through your seasons. And like, one of the things that we see a lot is they get in that gray space and they're like, I got all this overhead, I'm spending $150,000 a month, but I'm not making profits. I'm not doing this. And then it's like, what are we doing?
You'll fall flat. I mean, that's how it is. Think of how many, and I'm not going to mention any or go down this hole, but how many names like come into this space and make noise, and then all of a sudden are gone, and you don't even notice it. It's because of this phenomenon, and it's like the social media pollution. Like, how many people can I get? How many cars can I line up to get a drone photo go over? Like, how can I buy a Tesla so I can take videos and it's madness, right?
Yep.
Like,
it is.
This is my business. Paramount is the foundation of what I do. It's not the walls, the ceiling, the roof, all the nice stuff inside. It's the foundation of what I do. It allows me to build pillars on top of that foundation, right? Whether it's other businesses, investing, Airbnbs, commercial properties, whatever else I do, right? That's the foundation. It's not a money well, right? Where every time I want to buy something, I'm going and pulling the well up and hey, we need a new building. Hey, we need a new car.
It's
hey,
the mothership, bro. You got to treat the mothership like the mothership.
And as soon as that foundation's cracked, the walls go sideways. And what happens, as roofers, we know the roof falls down.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's a relationship with your business is what it is. You're in a marriage with your relationship.
And you have to have discipline. And like Austin said earlier, which I really loved, is like you have to find yourself and you have to hold yourself accountable. There's no superstars in any athlete in the world that didn't have respect for their coach, right, and their team and want to be held accountable. Like, if you're a superstar, you want that accountability.
We're talking a lot about accountability, so I have a potentially two-part question. I'll start with you, Eric. Has there ever been a time where you've noticed that you maybe an aha moment where you're like, I'm not doing a good job holding my team accountable. I'm noticing these issues happening consistently. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. I have a theory that the longer that period of time takes place where people aren't being held accountable, when you try to hold them accountable, there's an increased likelihood of negative emotion from that person that you're trying to hold accountable, right? Yeah. It's like telling your teenager you're going to pay them to do their chores. They don't do their chores, but you keep fucking paying them.
Right.
So now when you go back 3 months later and you're like, dude, you got to wash the dishes, you got to walk the fucking dogs, or you're not getting your $20.
Mike, fire analogy, bro. Great job.
Listen, bro, I'm here for the people.
You fire your teenager.
Yeah. So
not a good analogy.
So how do you approach that situation to minimize the likelihood of there being friction, tension, negative emotion associated with that conversation?
I know what I want to say. I just don't know if it's going to come out well. But in the end, you have a mission to do, right? And your mission is to create a business that's healthy. And you have to look at it through that lens, not your own emotional lens. And that's the thing of like, you're hiring friends when you start out, right? You have friends, you have family members, and they're not doing what their job, but they're not doing their job totally. Maybe they're late to every meeting, right? And then everybody starts being late to the meeting. And then the meetings are always 30 minutes late. You have to cut the cord, and that's it, right? Like you have to recognize in that situation, hold yourself accountable. And if you're not a good manager, like I'm not a very good manager. I'm a good leader. I'm a good mentor. I'm a good visionary, but I'm not a good manager. I'm not good at sitting and reading the KPIs and like going through it. Like that's not me. So I bring people in that are that built, right? But yeah, you have to cut the cord. You have to, are you here for a friends group, or are you running a friends group, or are you running a business?
Yep. Yeah,
You have to ask yourself that.
And family makes things difficult. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have that in check, that's like number one. Tons of clients again. Been in my own businesses. I've had family, and it's like it's tough, man. You got to be able to have that line. But yeah, the thing that I think, when you I think you said it earlier. Actually, it was like when to hire, when to fire. Like the bigger question I always have from people is when to hire. But then I ask them, I'm like, well, what about the firing piece? Because there's plenty of things that are happening inside your organization where either it needs to be corrected by better accountability, or you need to go have some hard conversations. Yeah. And that's the stuff I was saying earlier. And so I think there's always a focus on like just hiring and throwing people at problems and then expecting it to resolve. And that doesn't work. Right? Or at least you guys have figured that out probably by now. That doesn't work. And you bring them on, you're like, go fix this thing. Right. And then you're like, that didn't work, but I'm going to throw another one at it and see if it works. Right. And it just doesn't work like that. And so then we have a firing problem on our hands, which is what you're more so talking about, or the accountability element, right? Which is to say, hey, I expect this out of you. And if it doesn't get done, because there's really two components. You talk to your EOS guys. So it's like, do they align to core values? Are they doing their role? Right. There's two components. There's a values component and there's an actual skill component. Right. And so if they're doing both well, then good. If they're doing one of those not well, then you're going to have problems. Either you have a cultural problem or you're going to have a getting their job done problem, right? And if you have both problems, then there's
a tool called the People Analyzer that is like an EOS tool, right? Where you run them through the core values and the GWC, get it, want it, capacity to do it. And as a leadership team, we score everybody, including ourselves, on the People Analyzer, making sure that the right people are in the right seats. And if the wrong person's in the wrong seat, or they're not following the core values, then that's it.
So we've talked about all these issues. We talked about the symptoms of the issues and the implications to the business. And what I want to do is I want to bring this full circle into like your exposure with merger and acquisitions. Like private equity is huge in roofing right now. Everybody's gonna fucking sell their company. Everybody, right?
We're all just gonna sell.
Yeah, we're gonna get 5X. So let me ask you this: like, if we were going to,
come on, Austin.
If we were going to look at selling our company, what are the first few things that are most important to consider? And this is prior to any conversation with a private equity company. I'm a roofing company. I do $10 million. I'm like, I want to sell this fucker. What are some things that I need to be cognizant of and that I can address and pay attention to?
I'm only smiling and doing this thing because I was going to say this is going to be a 2-hour long podcast here.
The fire's being
actually this started the podcast now.
Well, make sure that you keep an eye open for our next episode because we're going to go surface level here, but we're going to get into the weeds on the next one.
It's going to be like the last season of Yellowstone. You'll see next year.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, so I think that whenever we're talking about M&A, it's like everybody's going to sell their company, the things we just said a minute ago, right? Which is not the case. And this whole fear-mongering element to it, which is like, if you don't get in on it, you're done.
Angie's going to take over every small company.
I mean,
Home Depot and Lowe's is going to wipe us out.
There's a lot of, I mean, we joke, we say, 2-hour long podcast, but really, I mean, it could be, and we should talk about it later if you want to, very detailed, because I could talk about this forever. And I think the reason why is because there's so many different elements to it and there's so many things that are not going right. And there's also been an evolution to it. Like what has led us to today has been multiple failed projects. Like, I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to cause any.
But it rhymes with. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but it rhymes with. But no, I mean, what has led us to today has been a failed effort many of times, and then finally getting to where it's like, okay, it's being recognized by mainstream private equity, like some pretty big outfits, companies that you see storefronts and they're like, yeah, we own that. There's companies that are based in Cali and based in Florida, and they're big. I mean, they're running. I funded probably $30-40 billion worth of projects over the last, several, 20, 30 years type thing. Very reputable financial partners, right? So the element of M&A is just evolutionized into a way today where it's like, it's going like hotcakes, especially for the residential retail, outfit retail specifically. There are certainly projects that are happening and different consortiums of businesses that are occurring within the insurance space or commercial space or new construction space, like all of that different stuff. But they're all kind of going off the meat of the same bone right now. They're trying to go get the same, the Africa Roofing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's got all the realtor relationships and all this. And they know that by God, they're going to do $15 to $20 million in their sleep every single year. And they've got Ascend Marketing leading the charge. And, and they're going to get you a plug there, brother. Yeah. But no, I mean, they're doing those things, and then they're trying to bring, and the thought process of it seems like it would work, which is like, oh, let's take private equity money, let's take high net worth investor money, and let's go shove it down the throat of an Africa Roofing with $10 million more dollars in marketing, and just watch it go like that, right? But again, there's an element, and this is where I've got tons of things, and I'll stop talking in a second because I could literally go into a million different avenues with this. But the reason why there's so many projects that are going to continue to fail is because they don't have roofing subject matter experts behind them. They just don't really understand the trade. And what it sounds right on paper, right? And it's been executed in other trades industries, but roofing is just different, man. It's just different. And it's different because, and I know everybody thinks they're different, but like, let's be honest, right? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 roof done in a day, done in 2 days, right? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 plumbing project done in a couple weeks, right? Yep. It's not the same. It's not the same process. It's not the same expectations. You're dealing with literally $1 million plus properties that have stucco, that have been, you're going to re-stucco the whole house because you got shingle slide. You got also, like, let's just put a business person in there, someone like even myself that came in from corporate America, working out of New York City and, work with a bunch of smart people, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring those smart people into this industry, and they're going to know all of the things that Austin does, or all the things that Eric does. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And so, they're going to try to surround themselves. They try to do a good collaborative effort of recruiting and getting top tier companies. But realistically, the issue I think I see with all of it and the stuff that's going on is so much of the activity is just based off the investor finding an opportunity. It's caught wind, it's caught momentum. So then you organize it just like any other private equity platform type play, get a $1 billion fund behind it, try to go after one and scale up off the other. And then the reality is they're all trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to cycle it 3 to 5 years from now, once they establish the platform that is to the size they want it to be, and they've grown, they've done the acquisitions they want to make. Then they're just going to pump millions of dollars into it. They're gonna literally axe half the spending, and then they're going to make it extremely profitable, and they're going to try to go get it off to the next guy, right? And that's the play. That's how it all works by concept. So, yep.
2 questions.
I have a question too.
There's so many things we can talk about here, but let's
2 questions.
Doubtful, actually. Never mind.
Let's go ahead. Yeah.
3 most important things that a roofing company needs to be concerned with
Yep.
when they're considering eventually selling their company.
Yep.
And the most typical reason why these deals fall through.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't answer that question earlier. So, man, when they're selling their roofing company, I think one of the things that you see a lot of is you see these like big LOIs, and then they find things to be materially indifferent, and then it comes down to negotiation. Because the reality is the majority of these companies, the owners are the heartbeat, right? And so when you ask that question, like, what's really the biggest thing of like what would give you the best opportunity to participate and be able to have your business ready for that, right? It's going to be all the things we just got done talking about. I mean, now it's not, there's more depth to it, right? But like, you got to have an owner that's going to be able to like be at the top, come away and go to Italy for a month and come back and it not really change that much, truthfully. Like that's a huge thing. Having leadership in place, and a lot of it does come down to the numbers of the business, like healthy EBITDA percentage based on
And what's
revenue,
EBITDA for those that may not know?
earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And that is a coin term that's been universally accepted through this space as basically once you're, but basically before all of those things, like this is your profitability. So before you pay your taxes, before you get interest, depreciation, credits, all those types of things. Okay. Yeah. So, did you have a question to follow up with that? You good with me? Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's all of the things we just got done talking about. I think another big thing, and this is obviously something that we do at EP, is really making sure that the systems, the technology systems are working for you. If you can get to where you're optimized with that stuff, automations and workflows are set, and like really you understand your customer journey through and through, everything from the inception of that lead and where it came from and tracking your marketing metrics all the way to your drip campaigns and your, all your stuff that you do with your referrals and relationships and all that sort of stuff. But if you can figure that whole thing out and really have that documented and really have that like systemized to where you're super efficient with the scale of your company, then you're going to be very attractive, right? That's like the start of it. But then elements are, elements of like accrual accounting and being able to really foresee what your business is going to do.
What is accrual accounting?
Accrual accounting is so cash and accrual, not to be confused with sales. So sales is its own thing. I think a lot of people get that confused. Sales is when you sell a job and you write the $15,000 contract and you sign and the customer signs the dotted line, that's a sale. There's no earned income at that point. Right. Okay, it's not earned until you actually are in process of producing that work. Okay, so sales, let's leave that out. Cash is when money comes in. Cash is simple. Cash is when you receive it and when you throw it out, right? Whenever you're spending it and when you're incoming it. Whenever you're talking accrual, it's all based on when it's earned. So that's when we start talking about accounts receivable and accounts payable.
So when you're actually getting paid?
It's no.
Accrual is assuming collections, right?
Yeah.
Anything that's in your QuickBooks system that's been accounted for but hasn't been paid for yet, right? Yeah. So once I send Joe Smith an invoice for $12,000 and accrual, I'm assuming collection.
Correct.
So I'm including that $12,000 into my accrual account.
Earned. So I'm talking from an accountant perspective because that's more my. But yeah, he's spot on. It's when I say when it's earned is whenever that invoice goes out and you send that invoice out for $12,000, but you have not yet received that $12,000. That's earned, which means that's your accrual income.
So that's probably a pretty big deal at the end of the year.
Absolutely, and there's even bigger implications on the tax side of things, which people can hire me, like Eric just did, and I can make their money back for them just on what they spent with me based on their tax liability, because at the end of the year, I'm going to offset their deposit entries onto the balance sheet because it's a liability and have them not pay taxes on that. And most accountants are not going to do that.
For a dumb guy like me, we've got $2 million. We've got $2 million that we billed and invoiced in December.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get paid till at least January. We know that on these $2 million worth of billings. So
yes.
That would offset what I'm actually making in December of 2023, let's say. And that revenue would then go towards 2024, making your liability lower.
It depends on when the revenue is earned. Again, that comes back to, so like when he gave that analogy of like send the invoice out or whatever, whenever that invoice is sent out and earned, they would fall in the accrual books of that, whatever year that is, right? So if like, for example, I'm running like a commercial project, I'm running a phase project and I've got 5 billing cycles or progress billing. Well, whenever those get billed and are earned is whenever it's going to hit on your books, but you might not actually collect the cash until the following year or whenever it becomes earned, or whenever it comes in, that would become cash basis. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yep.
So yeah, like when you consider, and so this, I'm trying to answer your question because again, we could talk about it for forever, but all of the things we said earlier and having there's a whole preparation phase. Everybody skips this. And I always have to like beat this into the skulls of the people that we work with because they get excited. We're all excited. It's big money. It's generational changing money. And I'm all for it. I'm down with it. Like I love it. I'm getting involved with it. There's stuff that's coming down the pike that you guys will be hearing in recent weeks or in the next few weeks of some stuff that I'm going to be participating in. And it's great stuff. But the thing is like, you got to be prepared. They skip that step and they go straight to listing. And then they get the teams that do not know anything about roofing. And they get them because they're part of those M&A firms or they're part of due diligence outsources, and They come in, they try to get you prepared, they get you an ad back schedule, they get all these different things put together financially, and then they're like, all right, you're ready to go. Well, the reality is they don't know shit from shit when it comes to your business. So there's tons of times when I've gone into a listing and I'm like, this is not right. The financials are not correct. And due diligence will sniff this out because that's where things go awry, because they go and they list a company, they go, it's $12 million to buy or whatever, right? And then they go, well, this is materially incorrect. So now we're gonna try. I had one out of Florida, it happened like 2 last year. And they were like, went in for a $12 million LOI, and then it ended up getting reverted back down to a 7 because the financials were literally not correct since basically the inception of the company. And I was like, this could have all been prevented had you, and not only the distraction, like people act like I could have clients come on the show to be testimonials for that. Like, how much of a distraction is all of that when you start going down that path and you're like, I'm selling my company, I made the decision. Some owners want to be able to talk to their employees about it. Some of them want to not talk to their company employees about it. It's like a weird
That's my
thing.
next question.
Yeah, and those are things that we can talk about too. But I was going to say, like, when you start that conversation, brother, I've explained this to every one of them when they say I'm going, like I'm selling, right? And I go, okay, the path, it is this long, okay? It's, this is the start and this is you hitting the closing table and then all the things that follow after that, okay? And I said, when you list, that's like that much of it.
Right.
Like, this is not and that's a high level of distraction. Getting the owners to bring every skeleton out of the closet they can, getting their ad back schedule. I mean, literally, and it's such a distraction. And so before we even get to this, I'm like, let's prepare. And the preparation phase needs to incorporate education. You need to know what the hell you're about to get into. You need to understand what they are going to be looking for, which is the stuff we've already talked about on the show. You need to be able to have your finances in order. You cannot have your finances put together by a, GAAP accountant that graduated from Yale University because they don't understand the business. It's not going to work. I mean, you can get them to do it, but they will not understand, especially if you're in like an Austin type business. I can't speak for Eric's, but like where you've got progress billing, you've got commercial projects, you've got all these types of things. And so they're going to sit there and, like, especially when you're talking about insurance and supplementing and all these different nuances that they have no idea about. They'll go in there, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to progress bill you, and we're going to go on a progress accounting basis to prepare your books, for example. But they might not be giving you, like, he might have already been in a position of earning 80 to 90% of that revenue, but because of the way that GAAP works, which is the general accepted accounting principles, that's basically how all their CPAs like run their tests and stuff like that. Like, the reality is they might only credit you 40%. That impacts your sell value. Like, that impacts the ability to be able to ask for a higher dollar, or what's considered ad backs in our business versus other businesses. Like, there's so many different
What's an ad back?
An ad back is basically the ability to be able to say, this is an ancillary or a one-time expense in my business, or something that, like, I as an owner, so like if Eric's out there and he's buying Lamborghinis and Bugattis and all sorts of stuff, he's like, yeah, it's not necessary business, then you can add that as an ad back, because it's something that's owner discretionary. It's basically what that becomes. So basically at that point, you're adding that back into the EBITDA equation, which just comes back to that. So if your EBITDA rounds out, it'll be in $1.5 million or $2 million or whatever, and you say, hey, I've got $500,000 worth of ad backs. What those $500,000 of ad backs become is negotiable upon the sell to be considered to be part of that at EBITDA, because it was owner discretionary. So it could have
If I didn't buy the Bugatti, it would have been $2.5 million.
Exactly. So yeah. So all of this stuff.
Just to be clear, they don't get the Bugatti, right?
It could be transacting the sale. You can always do that. But no, I mean, and I don't want to take up all the talk time here. I want you guys to be able to ask questions or whatever. And I'm trying to answer your question the best I can. But dude, it's like there are so many different rabbit holes and so many things. You got to have good ops, good technology. Got to have sales. Got to have a sales process really truly lined out. Got to do production well. Now, obviously, there's things that you can get benefits of from the private equity suite. Like, they're going to bring cash, right? So hire more people, you can do more marketing, but like, dude, you got to know the trade. If you don't know the trade and you're like expecting these guys to figure it out for you, and especially if they're one of these, and I'm not going to name any names, I can, but some of these private equity outfits that are not led by industry professionals, they're like, black ties, worked on Wall Street, they came over, they found an opportunity. Like, dude, they are not going to know when something's, needing to have addressed, at a commercial project that's high stakes. I mean, it's just not even on the
But if I'm a roofer, I'm probably not, I don't have a level of education or sophistication as it relates to mergers and acquisitions to be able to sniff out like who's a really good partner versus one of these ties that know nothing.
Absolutely.
So how do I help make that determination early on so I'm not dealing with these fucking headaches down the road?
Yeah, man, that's such a good question too. This is like we could do a whole thing off this.
We will.
Okay.
Surface level.
So surface level, yeah. I mean, you got to be able to do like don't get multiple bids. There's guys that are like sitting there and they're like, oh, I just this one they approached me and it's 9x, and it's like, okay, go get another one. Get to know them. You're like a free agent. Go on the market. You know, you see NBA guy or NFL guy or whatever. They're going to go see every office. They're going to go meet this GM and this GM. This like entertain your offers. Like it's okay. It's nothing wrong with that.
Don't fall in love after the first day.
Yeah, don't fall in love. And to be honest with you, and I'm not trying to make them sound like slimebags because there's good dudes, but like just like brokers, they're all the same. They make 4 to 8%, sometimes up to 10 on your deal and your transaction if you're working through a broker. If you're going direct to PE, it's a little different, but I mean, they all sell. They're salespeople. It's what they do. They're getting cashed out on your deal. They're incentivized by your deal going through, because most of them don't have retainers.
Guys, right?
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, whenever you're in a position where you guys, I know it happens to you every day. It happened to me even when I was in, my stuff before I was exclusively on this side with small equity partnerships. Like they're knocking, emailing and calling and this and that. Like those are all it's all an attempt to get you to bite. And so if you get married to the first one and you're like, oh no, I have ties to this guy. Like, no, you should entertain and see what all the options are. So when you asked about that culture alignment, I would say if you do not feel confident in the roofing, especially for our industry, like if you are not familiar, if you meet with a group and they do not understand your language, red flag, like off the rip, like, especially if and that's the stuff I would test them with, because you guys would know even more than I would. The stuff you would probably want to ask to be like, how is this getting handled? How is this getting handled? And if they are like corporately answering those questions and not rooferly answering those questions, then you probably know what you're getting into, right? And some people want that. Like I've got a guy we help transact down in Florida as well, $47 million, the 90 days. He wanted out. He's like, I don't care, whatever. And it's great, but like his focus was not on long term. He'd like been in the industry for a long period of time. He wanted to get out. He got out, and he was walking in 90 days, and they let him. And I think that's stupid. Like for the record, because he's the heartbeat. I don't care how big your business is, it's the heartbeat, right? And there needs to be a transition period. And they came on as a consultant and all that sort of stuff, so it's fine. But I mean, I'm saying it's just like one of those things where I think that, I don't know. I think that it's one of those things where if you're looking into trying to get a peek under the hood beforehand, you got to start asking roofing questions, because it's going to sniff out pretty quick, and you got to entertain multiple. Like, don't get nailed down with one.
Well, it's interesting too, because like in sales, I don't know, when I used to just do sales for a marketing company and I decided to call a doctor, I wouldn't call them and talk about, how many customers are they looking to acquire. I would say patients, because it's relevant jargon to their specific industry. So like I feel like that's sales 101. And if you have somebody that's trying to put together and orchestrate a 10, 20, $50 million deal for you, if they haven't put in the effort to at least understand the nuance of the lingo, like how like to your point, like how familiar are they with the inner workings and the intimate dealings of a roofing company to be able to be?
It can't be. It's so complex, man. And that's why I don't know. I want to ask this question and from a different lens, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about the companies, and I may be one of these people, where it's like, hey, bring it on. Let the private equity buy around me, and I want to compete with them.
What do I have to say about that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you're saying if you don't participate and then they.
Well, I'm not going to. Like, I mean, right. Like Austin said earlier, the goalposts always move, right?
Yeah, sure.
So maybe one day. But right now, there's two big acquisitions right near me, in my market. And I'm like, hell yeah, like let it go, because how can they possibly, like you said, all the nuances of what we do. But I'm saying, I guess I'm more asking the questions for the roofers out there that are like, hey, I just learned how to build my business. I'm scaling. I'm growing at a good rate. My net's great. I'm building something that I could pass on, or I could sell once it gets bigger. Like I've heard people say at one of the conferences I went to last year, like, hey, if you're not going to be with them, you're going to compete with them and they're going to squash you.
Yeah.
And I'm more like, bring it on.
Yeah. So my reaction to that is, goes back actually to one of the questions that was asked quite a while ago before I ran on all these different tangents. And that's like, how does this all come together when, like, I'm not a doomsdayer about this, because it's got to get organized a lot before I start going, man, you probably should think about it. Like, because you're going to get drowned out, right? Certainly they're taking up marketing. Certainly they're doing their things because they have the money to do so, but it's not organized. So like when you say bring it on, I think that's an awesome mindset to have. But I think that there are a handful, not even a handful, there's a short list that are doing it, in my opinion, the right way, and doing it with subject matter expertise in-house, and they're doing things in a way where I think it's sustainable. It's I don't want to say like all the big names that are out there, but there's a lot of big names that are out there that are just like, they're just flipping it. Like and so whenever you're in that position, if that's what you're about, like, I think it all depends on, comes back to what Austin was saying earlier, which is it's a moving goalpost. Like, you will say, I want this now, and then maybe 5 years from now, you don't want the same thing, right? Sure. And that's okay. But if you said, hey, I'm going to go up against them, I think there's no problem with that. I think if you said 5 years from now, hey, man, I've exhausted everything I can do. I built my company to what I want it to be. I want my employees to share in a little bit of this wealth that I've accumulated here. I want to be able to do something special. The net earnings every year, putting $1 million in my pocket, is kind of getting a little old. I'd like to be able to put my money into other things and not have to worry about the business. And like, I just want to be able to up and sell it for $20 million, whatever the number is. It's like in your mind, 40, 50, whatever, right? Then that's great. Then you do that, right? But I think the answer to the competition element is, they're really right now, outside of them just pummeling some markets with marketing, they're very organized right now. I mean, that's just the truth.
I mean, you see even companies like around us that, they may do similar, like probably a little bit less revenue, but they're marketing companies. They're not even roofing companies, right? They're not. They're marketing
sales organizations.
Sales organizations, right? And we have a bunch of them.
Big difference too in what you're buying there.
But from a consumer's aspect, right? Like, if we're looking at it from a consumer's lens now, like the shout outs on Facebook, the reviews, they're going through all these things because they have all this data in front of them, the content, we're constantly pushing out content. I feel like I would just be hard to compete with. Sure, you can come in and market and blast, you can triple my budget in PPC. You can hire somebody almost as good as Mike and, get.
And both Paramount and A. Fricker, which is these companies, for the folks listening, I'm sure that you could probably figure that out by now. You probably have a subtitle by now, I imagine. But you both have tremendous brand names. And I think that that's really hard to replace. Like, even if you do have, even if it's like, hey, we're going to have Mike, 5 Mike Stearns on your, marketing team or whatever, right? And we're going to throw all the money we can at it. There's something to be said about the household name and just the organic growth. And like, I think that, and of course, that's what makes you guys, when you talk about sales organizations or the chasers or the this or the that, like, there's a totally different multiple set for those companies, right? And I think that when you go through due diligence, and everything gets snuffed out, because literally every skeleton will find its way out of the closet. It's not something that's even remotely the same. I mean, you've got your own metal fabrication and your own whatever, like, there is tremendous amount of value, not only from this element of being able to work direct with metal cutting with roofers, right? But then you have like the expertise in-house. You do your own stuff. You do, like, that's a totally different business to be buying, right? But as far as competition is concerned, man, like, I'm of the belief, which I love the balls on it, which is like, fine, cool, let's do it. Let's tango, boy. Yeah, let's do it. Bring it. Let's go. I love that.
Compete with the best.
I love that. And I love that. And I want to compete with the best too, and what I do. But I think at the end of the day, it's really more of a question of, what do you want? Like, if you said, hey, I want to do that, like, I don't think we're at a point, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think we're at a point where you're going to get suffocated by that presence. And so at that point, it's more, do I want to participate, or do I just want to do what I'm doing, right? Yeah. And make my, cool net per year that I make, and, keep rolling it down the road. And in an evolutionarily, it will start to dwindle, right?
That's what I was going to ask.
It will absolutely, within the
in
next.
your opinion, you see, like, I mean, it's trending right now, right? Like, it's a hot topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
But how many times after they fall on their face, I'm sure the good ones will prosper, right? But just like all the other roofing companies out there, private equity companies, well, 90% are not going to make it.
Well, it's like realtors during COVID. You know what I mean? I don't know if it was the same in your guys' market, but in Oklahoma, everybody and their dog became a realtor during COVID. Interest rates were low. Everybody was buying. I mean, I knew people that like moved into 2 different houses in the span of 2 years, you know, because there was the next best deal and everybody was selling, you know, houses like hotcakes. And now all those realtors are starving out. Yeah. The real ones, they always say like 90% of real estate is sold by 10% of the realtors, which is very true in our market. And I think there's going to be similar to that, where there's going to be some ones that truly figured out the best equation. And then there's going to be a lot of them that were like, you know what, that didn't work. Let's stick to another industry that's more of an equation that makes sense on paper and also makes sense in reality a little bit better than roofing does. Because the other thing too is that if somebody comes in and buys up these companies and dumps a ton of money into it in my market, one, I'm still going to fucking destroy them one way or another.
I love the balls, boy.
I don't care. I've got the best team in Oklahoma. I'll go toe to toe with anybody. Yeah. Number 2, though, we're members of the community.
Yeah.
You go to a gymnastics place, you're going to see a banner where we sponsor it. You go to a kid's fun run, you're going to see our logo on the back of the shirts. You're going to see Mike's logo on the back of the shirts. You go to a T-ball game, you're going to see our name out there. You drive by, you're going to see a billboard with a dog wearing a fucking hard hat, and it's going to say your local woofer. That's us. You know what I mean?
I've seen the billboards when I'm in town.
We are your local roofer. Yeah. The people that are in our organization are your local roofers. And I don't think that that's something that you can just come in and duplicate.
Often imitated, never duplicate.
Yeah. And I don't think you can come in and take that from us either.
Right.
Yeah. So another thing you have to understand too is like kind of the evolution of what got us here, which I know I said earlier, like there was a lot of failed projects in 2018, 2019, 2020, like leading into this. And I think now what you're seeing is there's more money that's thrown into it. Like it started, you know, there was a public-private presence, like different makeups, right? It'd be like full equity purchases, but it would all be stock options, or it would be whatever. Like there's a lot of different things that have kind of brought us to now. But I don't think the money is the issue. And one of the things he said, it's like, you know, I wonder how effective they'll be. These guys are not going to lose money. What they're going to do is they're going to piss off people.
Yeah.
And
that's what's going to happen.
I'm saying from a homeowner standpoint, like how effective can they be to bring what we bring to
But
our
not
customers?
just homeowners. Like they're going to piss off their own people. They're going to piss off the owners that transact them, that do actually give a shit about their company's culture and care about what they're about, right, in the community, right? Like because what they're going to supplier relationships, because what they will not do is not return their investors' profit. You can guarantee that.
They'll find a way.
They will find a way. So
what's it at the expense of?
That's what I'm saying. What is it at the expense of?
This is the way that I look at it. That's why I said, like, bring it on. You know, like you take some of the companies, the bigger companies and the good companies that we compete with, and you dilute them with corporate values and from the suits. You deplete that culture. Once that culture is depleted, we know in all of our businesses, you have a weed in your garden. That weed will continue to grow and take over your garden, right? Unless you pick it.
Yeah.
And one thing that Corey brought up on one of your podcasts was like hiring a company like his. You know, he used the example of, you know, bundles came off a roof, hit an AC unit. That's why hiring a company like his is so valuable, because, you know, they had temporary AC set up right afterwards. They got the unit replaced right afterwards. Well, what I've seen with a lot of these companies, these more corporate companies that have came into Oklahoma and failed, is the ability for them to solve issues like that at their level quickly, efficiently, and keep people satisfied and happy, and turn that into a referral.
It's hard for us.
Yeah, it's hard for us, and it's like I know this person to some degree. Like in Tulsa is the world's biggest small town. There's 1 degree of separation between everybody in the town. And so for them to be able to do that, I think it's going to make a lot of customers upset. And ultimately, that ruins a reputation. Even if you bought a really solid reputation, like Africa Roofing, for example, that could be ruined in 6 months. Very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I could ruin it in 6 months if we didn't do what we should be doing.
Shit, give me 60 days.
Yeah, it doesn't
Run
take
this
long to
fucker
become
right to the ground.
obsolete,
Mike, mess with my marketing. Screw everything up.
It's true, though. You know, I mean, that's the reality of it.
Disappear all the time. It doesn't take long to become obsolete.
No, yeah. Yeah, and so I think to kind of just put a stamp on it from my perspective, and then I'll bow out. Just final thought. I think that if you are interested in participating, just do good research and make sure that you're understanding of what you're wanting to accomplish and what you want. I did like a whole hour just monologue of like explaining private equity and sending it out in an email blast because tons of people need to know what it is, right? And like they need to understand what they're getting into when they take these calls or they take an interest. And one of the biggest things is they're all the same. They're all taking high net worth investor money and trying to convert it into a return. Just know that. Okay. So anytime you hear a company that's like, oh, I'm never going to sell, that's not going to happen. They will sell at some point. I promise you, they are not trying to work off your business and accumulation of all the other, we're creating the consortium of entities that they're trying to create to just generate the net profits after they made $1 billion worth of purchasing investment and marketing investment, all these different things, to not try to go get 3 to 5x on their investment because that's what they're trying to do, right?
That's
so
the American dream, right?
It's the whole and that's what they're all about. So I think it's important for you to understand that each strategy is what's different. So when I say that, I talk about it like more of the concept of, do you want to sell your company 100% cash, get out in 90 days, say, hey, I'll hand a little bit out to each of my key employees and I'm out, I'm done, I'm deuces, see you, bye. If that's what you want, go talk to a company that's interested in that model, right?
And I'm assuming you take a little bit less if that's the case.
Not always. No. Sometimes they just want to. So, okay, great concept, great point. We can talk about this a little later too, is the methodology in which these funds execute capital, right? And purchase these businesses is a lot of them want you to leave and get out of the equity picture because they want to hold the holding co's equity stake, right? So a lot of them were like, oh, I don't want you to roll back anything, Mr. Owner, meaning what rollback is whenever you sell your company. I'm selling 100% of my company for $10 million. Let's make a simple example, okay? And I'm going to roll back 10%. That means that $1 million, now you got broker fees and all these other things, but let's just make it simple. $10 million, I'm going to roll back 1 million of that into the share stake, into the share pool, right, of what I'm going to own of the holding company as the owner. So I still own something, but I'm just a seat at the table. I don't actually like make the call on my business. Make sense? Okay. And so what you look at that from that perspective is that some of those holding company or some of those private equity entities, they want you to be able to walk because they want to hold that. Some of them like, hey, we know you're important. We know Austin is irreplaceable. Eric's irreplaceable. These guys are, so let's give these guys a little
Mike's
piece
irreplaceable.
Of it. Mike's irreplaceable.
Just kidding.
But like whenever you get in that position, I'll finish my thought here, say that once you understand that strategy, that's what I call it's a private equity strategy. Then if you're like, hey, I want to retain 40% of my company, but in terms of, retaining 40% of the what I sold it for in share value, right, in the interest of the holding company, then you can do those things. And that's some of the stuff that I love to talk through and get into more details about. But it's so different because a lot of those are like, hey, they might do earnout. They might do it from an earnout perspective. They might say, hey, our company has to hit certain metrics in order for you to be able to receive that entire equity portion or whatever the case is. There's so many different models to it, but really it all breaks down to what's the private equity strategy. So some of them will be all cash heavy. So when you say that, some of them actually like to give the full value on cash most of the time because they want to be able to just say, hey, cool, that's great. Because then what they get in return is they got your company that's in theory, let's say you transact for $50 million and you're doing that off of, 7.5, net or something like that. Okay. Well, 7.5 net, they're going to pump more shit in. They're going to do more investing. They're hoping to get that thing to a 10 or a 15 in a shorter period of time. And then they want to make a cash on cash return on that 50 and then hold all of it. That's their thought process.
So if I'm the owner, the benefit if I did 10% and earn back would be, okay, right now that those shares are worth $1 million, but if they 5X this in 18 months, that million's worth $5 million.
Gain.
And
yep,
some of the M&A companies or private equity are going to be like, no, we want that 5 to 1, even on that 10%.
Because there's always two transactions. There's your transaction, whether you're the platform set or whether you're the one that's getting bought, and then there's always the one that it transacts down the road.
But that could go the opposite direction too, though. What if they bankrupted your company?
Dude, I'm telling you,
that could definitely happen, right?
Well, they won't. That's what I'm saying. They won't. When you're in a big enough deal, I'm not of the doomsday belief that they are going to like collapse and fall like, oh my gosh, all these high net worth investors, like it won't happen. People get knocked off before they'll let that happen. Like, I'm not saying that to be weird, but like,
What if they just sold
true.
it for parts though? Because they're like, you know what, this just isn't working out.
Well, the effort, I've seen it already a couple times. The effort tends to be that they want to go and recruit guys and bring them in because they're going to put them on hefty salaries. They can afford to do so, right? And they're going to try to come in and replace an Austin. If Austin is like the guy and he's the number 2 guy, right? He's not the owner, I'm saying, but he's the guy. And Austin walks because he's like, deuces, I'm out. This is bullshit. Well, then they're going to try to replace him 1,000%. And they're going to go to find it. And even if they're from, like, I've seen people go and sourcing folks from pest control and so forth, like just other industries that have like GM level expertise that they're like, yeah, cool, we'll bring you in, we'll give you $500,000 salary and bonus, off of profits and things like that, and like roll. And now, so what you're asking is like, does it collapse? I don't think it collapses. I think it becomes much less efficient, much less of the hometown company, much less cultural, much less all those things.
So then a sales organization.
What ends up becoming is it becomes a sales organization, or it just becomes a company like everybody's like, yeah, this is that other company in town. This is a Frick, or this is that, whatever. And then it's like, you don't want that stigma, especially if you're someone that's as prideful of your brand as you guys should be, as these two, where that would negatively affect not only your feelings of how things went, but then it would also affect your people significantly. The people that you say, hey, and that matters the most. That's when earlier you said something I was about to say, gold nugget number 2, but fulfillment is like, it's the thing. If you can't figure out the thing that makes you most fulfilled, which is always, in most of my experience, the ability to be able to create opportunity for people and be able to take care of people and be able to, have people own their piece of the business, that we were talking about that earlier. Like, then what's it all matter, right?
What's it all for?
And so that's the stuff that, like, I think you have 2 different kinds of owners, and owners like you guys, and owners that are like, I just want the money out and I'm out. Like, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I don't care. I'll give $1 million to this one, $1 million to this one, $1 million to this one, and I'm out. Like, and I'm going to go take the 40 myself and just go live wherever I want to do, never have to worry about money again. And I'm not going to say like that's fine, because that's against my values, but everybody has their own thing that they want to do.
What are your thoughts? Did you say take? No. What are your thoughts on what are the perks, I guess, or cons to selling to another roofing company in your market versus what we're talking about here? I mean, obviously, private equity is going to have more money, and they're going to be able to bankroll most of the time more.
Greenfielding efforts are okay. I think that it just depends on it's like, what's the strategy? What's the point? Like, if you're like, hey, I'm going to build a micro, I'm going to do like a micro roll up of 4 companies or something, right, in my market, and then try to execute a higher EBITDA. And I don't want to like spoil everything for another show, because I'm sure we'll get into this and that. And also, there's some stuff I'll be happy to talk about somewhat publicly. I've got some things that I can't disclose, but stuff that we're working on that is right up in the private equity space, and it's going to be, I think, very unique in the way that we do it. That's my opinion. But I'll say this: that whenever you are, going to go into a deal like that, it's always, what is the goal? And are we, like, you have to will that goal forward. Because if you're wasting your time, I've seen people do this. They'll do like greenfield efforts. They'll try to like go in and get up a few companies, and then they like, it doesn't work, or it fizzles, or it works, like they execute everything legally, but then it's like, it's a shit show, and like cultures don't align and things don't work. And then what they end up doing is they just kind of maintain and sit while everybody else, like maybe the primary guy that was organizing, it's like, okay, because it's money in his pocket, but then everybody else is miserable in the process. Like, you must figure out a way to transact that company if that's what you're trying to do. Like, if you're going to do that and go through that process and collide 5 different egos,
like you said.
Yeah, you got to know what you're trying to do, and that's all comes in the prep. And you can't just go to a broker. This is promise is the last thing I say with this. You cannot go to a broker, because I've gone on too many tangents with this, but you cannot go to a broker and be like, I want to sell my company, and here's all that I got, and like organize it all, and that like it's all just going to work out. Like, they're going to put the data room together, going to get all your financials prepared, they're going to put everything, they're going to do the interviews, they're going to do this, that, all the things that go into having a company listed. And it's going to be like done the right way and for your most maximum top tier value. They will sell it. They will market it like Mike Stearns, right? They'll market.
Oh,
No, I'm saying from like
companies.
they'll make it. I'm saying they'll make it rain, brother. That's what I'm saying. They'll make that marketing rain, boy. They'll make them leads rain. But what I'm saying, no negative connotation to Mr. Mike and Ascend here. I'm just saying that they will make it rain, right? But then it's what do you have? What buyer are you attracting? Is a business ready to transact? Are your employees ready for this movement? Are you ready for this movement? Do you have all your business, or you have all your finances shored up to where you're going to maximize the valuation of your business and all the different things you asked that question earlier? It's like, there are multiple components to maximizing your valuation. I'm not trying to like be stingy with the knowledge and the intricate details. There's just a lot to it. And that's what our firm does. Like, that's what we do. So like, just bow to due respect. It's just like if you were going to come out and be like, oh, this is exactly how I do LSA and PPC and this, that, whatever. Like, I mean, but there's also, for us, there's a lot to it. Like, there's a lot to what we do, and it's not.
And I cannot wait to dive into that in the subsequent episode of the Mission Control podcast. You mentioned exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm sure you guys aren't, because we promised a banger, and this has fallen nothing short of a banger. So I want to thank you at home. I want to thank Eric. I want to thank Connor. I want to thank Austin.
Thanks for letting me be the honorary interviewee, by the way, because these two studs, and then I ended up becoming the one that got asked all the questions. That was not by design. So
none of this was scripted. This was, they're like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. We're gonna figure it out." Yeah. And I think it worked out well. And I hope that we provided value. If we did, drop some comments, share it with someone that'll help. And again, thank you for our sponsors at Roofers, and stay tuned. A lot more fire to come.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. And we gone.
Go, baby. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.